Thank you, everybody, for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you can see the video on my Rumble page at William Wallace for America, and vice versa. With me today is one of my favorite guests, especially when it comes to talking about pro-life issues, and we got some updates on that you're going to want to hear from Father Frank Pavone. Father Frank Pavone, thank you so much for being there with us. How are you doing today?
Oh, it is so great to be with you again. I'm doing well, and we're getting ready now for the two biggest pro-life events of the year in rapid succession. One in Washington Friday, and the next one in San Francisco on Saturday. And I'll be at them both, leading different events.
Wait on, I didn't realize there's one in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's called the Walk for Life West Coast. It started back in 2005 was the first one. So I mean, the March in Washington has been going on for much longer than that. But the Walk for Life West Coast has actually become the second largest pro-life march. They get about 50,000.
You mean in one of the most pro-abortion states?
And one of the most dirty states and filthy cities, I should say. We all know what's been going on in San Francisco, but on Saturday, the pro-lifers take over.
Do they clean up the city for you and add American flags and stuff like that?
Well, they don't quite go that far, but at least the San Francisco Police Department make us feel very, very safe. And where we walk anyway, it tends to be okay.
Not that I'm trying to get in on the parade, but trash pickups have a lot of get a lot of coverage. It's almost like you can do a two for a March for Life and a trash pickup.
I know what you're saying. That's right. A little cleanup campaign.
Although I don't know that I would want to clean up dirty needles and stuff like that.
Isn't it terrible? I mean, it goes to the point of what we're dealing with this election, doesn't it? I mean, when it gets so bad in all these different places, voters will wake up and they say we need different leaders.
But I'm going to make a connection here, Father, is that I would contend, and maybe you would too. I'll ask you, that when we live in a society where we don't put life first, we have less value on not only life but less value on our surroundings, and as a result, that kind of bleeds into things like we see in San Francisco, where there's homelessness, rampant homelessness, needles on the street. It's dirty. People using the bathroom. People don't have a value for life. They don't have a value for their own lives.
Yeah.
Have you all made the connection with that, with the Life organization?
Oh, definitely. And you could put it this way. I mean, if human life isn't special, why should its surroundings be special? If human life isn't precious and sacred, why should the homes that humans live in, or the streets on which they walk and drive, what needs to be special about those things? Right. The reason things should be special and that the environment should be safe and that our cities should be clean, it all boils down to the precious dignity of human life. But once you take out that foundation, it's like the foundation of every issue. You take that foundation away and everything else collapses. It's like, why should we have secure borders? Why should we have a good economy? Why should we have protection from terrorism? It all goes away once you say that human life is disposable.
So it's almost like the pro-life organization is more than just ending abortion or more than changing abortion laws. It's also a way to help people feel more respectful about not only other people's lives, their life, but their surroundings, is what I'm hearing.
It secures that respect. In other words, the way I've explained it, none of us in the pro-life movement say, even though our focus is ending abortion, none of us say that abortion is the only issue. But what we do say is that the right to life that we're defending is the core of every issue. It doesn't replace every issue. It's the core. It's the foundation. So, why do you feed the poor? Well, because the poor have a right to food and clothing and shelter. Why? Because they have a right to live. And why is unemployment an issue? Well, because people have a right to make a living. Why? Because they have a right to live. Yeah, it all boils down to that foundation.
I love this. It's almost like when God gave us free will and our Constitution guaranteed, our God-given rights and our free will. It's almost like since then we've kind of needed organizations like the pro-life organizations to kind of prop up, if you will, or add value back to those life decisions
Yeah.
as a way to keep our communities and our society going in a positive direction.
Right. Across the board, all across the
So,
board. Yeah.
so is that the answer to my next question, or is there another answer as to why do we even need to have a pro-life organization, or in this case, a pro-life rally, which I want you to tell us about is this weekend? Do
Yeah.
we even need a pro-life rally anymore if we've ended abortion? So so now the abortion law, we've ended Roe v. Wade,
Hmm.
and that's thanks to all of the previous marchers
Yes.
in DC and all the previous activists for that. But now that the abortion decision has gone back to the states, which I'm going to tell you, I'm 100% for that. It's a state issue now
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because it is a decision that puts freedom, liberty, and the decision-making power back closer to the people in their own states. But why do we even need a pro-life march anymore if now we got Roe v. Wade overturned?
Well, because Roe v. Wade was overturned, but that didn't give the protection to these babies. They still need protection. In other words, some states have acted on this new opportunity and have protected with the unborn. We got like 14 states where they're protected right from the very beginning. But we've got all the rest of the states that still allow at least some abortion. And so we have these pro-life marches and we have these pro-life rallies to speak up for those children and to say, look, America, can't we do better than abortion? Can't we protect both the babies and at the same time help those moms and those dads and those families? And the answer to that is yes, we can do better. And that's what these rallies are meant to say. Like you were just saying, it embraces issues all across the board, because we're saying there's a better solution. Because when we allow abortion, and in some states it's allowed without any restriction or limitation whatsoever, you end up having all kinds of other problems. There's health problems that follow abortion, and that's going to be one of the things we're going to see in these coming days at these events. I organized the Silent No More gathering, where you'll have people who've had abortions, and they stand up and they say, my life was devastated. My relationships were broken. I couldn't continue my career. I got into substance abuse. And, we look at substance abuse, for example, or child abuse, and a lot of these other social problems. There's some interesting and disturbing connections between those problems and abortion. Because a person who has done an abortion, they often feel so bad, so guilty. They feel so much pain that then they go ahead and numb the pain with substance abuse. So what we're going to see in the coming days, and we'll go through what these events are going to be. They're at that website, prolifemarch.org, is that we're going to see some of these gatherings where these people tell their stories. And we realize that, hey, we've got to come together and we've got to keep attention focused on this issue, because the job isn't done yet. Removing Roe removed a big obstacle because the courts kept striking down the pro-life laws. But now that obstacle's out of the way, but we still got to pass the laws, and we still got to persuade people that abortion's not a good idea.
So I've got a question on what you're talking about right now, but but before I ask that question, I want you to answer the question. So when is the pro-life march?
Yeah.
We know it's in DC, but when is it? And then let's talk about some of the activities around it and how people can find out more about it.
Okay, so 2 big marches: DC on Friday, the 19th, San Francisco on Saturday, the 20th. So let's start with Friday, and people will see this on prolifemarch.org. I'm going to start in the morning.
I'm scrolling at the bottom of the screen right now.
On the bottom of the screen. I'm leading the National Prayer Service. Now, we've been doing this for 3 decades. The National Prayer Service is going to be held in Constitution Hall, and people, again, at that website will see all the address and the time frame and everything. And it's an interdenominational service, and we're going to pray starting at 8:30 in the morning. But we're going to also honor some people. Now, William, you remember Mark Houck, the pro-life activist from Philadelphia, whose home was raided by the FBI.
Oh, yeah.
Right in the morning. And then they came with drawn guns, and he had him and his 7 children and his wife that they said, what's going on here? So the Biden administration tried to tried to punish this man under a federal law for making a disturbance outside an abortion clinic. Bottom line is, a jury cleared him. He didn't do anything wrong. It was an intimidation tactic. And we're going to have Mark there in person. He's going to get an award. He's going to speak. People could have a chance to meet him if they've never met him. And the idea is that we're all going to come together and say, look, we're not going to let our voices for the unborn be silenced. We know there's a weaponized government. We know the abortion lobby they're very powerful and they're well funded, and they don't just want to do what they do. They want to stop us from doing what we do. So that's why, so the prayer service, we're also going to have this bishop there, Joseph Strickland. I think a lot of our listeners probably heard about that. Pope Francis removed this bishop from his position in his diocese in Texas because, again, he was outspoken about these things. And he was outspoken about politics and outspoken about abortion. And, they punished him for that, just like they had done to me a year earlier.
Right.
And it's like, what's going on here? It's like, cancel culture in the church. So we're going to honor him. People will be able to meet him. He's going to speak. So all of this is the first thing on Friday, National Prayer Service, Constitution Hall. Okay, then we go to the March for Life itself. We will march up Constitution Avenue, and it's going to be a great hundreds of thousands of people. And then at the Supreme Court, once we reach that point, that's like the conclusion of the march. That's when I will lead this gathering of Silent No More. And we will actually hear right there on the sidewalk in front of the Supreme Court, we'll have a big sound system set up, those that have had abortion, not just the moms, dads as well. And they're going to speak up about the pain, the devastation that abortion brings. And then they're going to speak about how they found the healing, the welcome. We're a movement of compassion.
Yeah.
We don't, we who reject abortion, we don't reject those who've had abortions. And I'm sure there's people listening right now that they've had abortions or they know people who've had abortions. We don't judge you. We don't condemn you. We don't reject you. We want you to come to healing. And that's why we share these testimonies out in public, because then people hear it and they say, hey, there's hope for me too. So that's what Friday's events are. Those are the three main things on Friday.
That's amazing. So I'm a freedom liberty guy.
Yes.
I'm a pro-life freedom liberty guy.
Yes.
So while on one hand, I respect people's freedoms to make choices, even if I don't agree with them. Okay. Right. So and the way that I don't want to say walk that line, but the way that I bring the reason why I bring it to the table this way is because I like to talk about things that bring both sides together in a freedom sort of way that still protects life, where I like to talk about things like adoption. Yes. And I like to talk about things like how we can get women better health care, how we can get better awareness, how we can bring more people to the table to help prevent, those choices in the future, even at the beginning, how to give better education in our schools to people. So that way, to young children, so they can in a positive way make better decisions in the future. That being said, does the pro-life organization do things around this to be able to help still protect freedom, so to speak, but promote life as a priority?
Oh, absolutely. And we'll have a lot of those people at the prayer service, and even more of them at the march itself, who are, for example, leading pregnancy centers, who are fostering adoptions, who are trying to change policies to make adoption easier. Absolutely. The people that will be gathering together cover all those kinds of activities. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And that's one of the benefits of coming to these marches. It's not that just that you're marching, it's that you're meeting all these people. And there will even be conventions and conferences going on Thursday, on Friday, and on Saturday. Educational conferences. Again, people will see more of the details at this website, prolifemarch.org, whereby people will learn about all the different organizations that are providing this kind of help. Adoption services, pregnancy services, and not only learn about them, but be able to get involved and support them. Because, like you say, unless we can, and really what we're doing when we're doing that, we're enhancing freedom. I mean, people are free if they have the different options. People are free if they're empowered with first of all, the knowledge of, hey, here are my choices. And then and that's what the pro-life movement is. We don't just stand in front of the world pointing fingers. Oh, this is bad, don't do it. We're extending our hands, and we're saying, take our hand, let us lift you up into greater freedom, to the freedom of being the power to choose
Right.
what is right, the power to do what is best for me and for my family.
And this is one thing I've always said, and one of the many reasons why I love having you not only on my show, but having you as a friend in my network. That you understand that like I do, you can be pro freedom, and what the pro life group does is it actually promotes more freedom, but it promotes education.
Education.
It's
Yeah.
like we don't want people to choose abortion. We want to
Right.
do everything we can to give them as many other choices as possible, to choose other options instead of having to choose
Yeah.
abortion.
Yeah.
And that in itself is more freedom. Whereas I think that the left, and the real hard-nosed pro-choice people think it has to be one way or the other,
Mm.
which I think it puts confusion to people who don't want to be in the pro-life march or pro-life organization, because they feel like it has to be just one decision or the other. But what I like with your group and other groups like yours that say, hey, look, we're working on better legislation for adoption. We're working
Mm.
on better ways for healthcare for women,
Yeah.
and this is the space to do it in. So to that point, do you guys see a way for somebody who might be a more hard-nosed pro-choice person, or somebody who votes pro-choice or leans pro-choice because they don't see all the other options that you all have? Do
Mhm.
you all see this pro-life march and the organization as a way that they can visit and possibly find that there's other options in that space that they can work in with you guys on?
Well, if they are inclined to do so, they would be welcomed, and they would realize that this movement is very, very diverse, very, very big. That's one of the first things that impressed me when I went on the march, and it was in 1976. I was just
Nice.
17 years old, and I said, "Wow, this is big! Look at all these people doing all these things." So yeah, it would be an educational experience for them, and I think it would be encouraging for them to find out that, look, we're not judgmental, we're not hateful. We want people to flourish. We want people to do what's best for them. And so often, I would ask the pro-choice person, if you're really in favor of choice, then shouldn't a pregnant mom know what all her different choices are?
Right.
Because what we find, and we run, William, the largest ministry in the world for healing people after abortion, and
Right.
called Rachel's Vineyard. Okay, so what do we find when we work with these women? All of them, just about all of them, will say, I didn't know the other choices I had. I didn't feel free.
Right.
In other words, abortion happens not because of freedom of choice, but because people feel they have no freedom and no choice. So what I would say to a pro-choice person is, do you want the woman to have more choices or fewer choices? And do you want her to know about those choices or not? And of course, the other important thing is, do you want her to know the consequences of those choices? Now, the scripture tells us, God says through Moses, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses, right? He
Right.
gives us the choice. He gives
Yeah.
us freedom. And then he says, choose life. Now, the thing I often point out is, we get to choose which way we're going to go, the way of life or the way of death. What we don't get to choose are the consequences, because he says, I set before you life and blessings. Those go together. Death and curses, those go together. He doesn't give us the choice of life and curses or death and blessings. We
Right.
get to choose the road we're going to go on. We don't get to choose where it leads. And this is something that I think too, someone like you said, even someone who's pro-choice, they go to an event like we're going to have, they come to our prayer service, or they go to the march, or they go to one of these educational conferences that's about to take place. And they're going to realize, wow, there's a lot of information here about, what happens next. You get
Right.
beyond just the choice and figure out what's going to happen next. Where does this lead? Does abortion enhance a person's relationships, or does it tend to destroy them? Does it improve their health, especially if they want to have a child later on, or
Right.
does it harm their health? These are important questions.
What I find important is I think that there is a far left side of a part of this faction on this subject that sees it as easier to separate us on making just on whether it's life or death. Whereas to your point, that makes my point too here in a second, that I think more people would come together on life knowing that there's other options and more choices. I'm
Mm.
meeting more and more people that are Republican that are all or even find themselves identify as being Christian, still being a little bit pro-choice. And I find some pro-choice people that would be more pro-life and maybe even vote Republican for that matter if they knew of all of these other avenues that I
Right,
see the
right,
pro-life organization as moving towards, where you're saying, look, we want to bring more people together on choosing on better options and finding ways to give women better health care instead of just making it a one decision or the other. And that's what I like about what you're doing, is bringing more people together to say, hey, you might be pro-choice, but if you come into our think tank, so to speak, we're going to find ways to help women better, give everybody better choices, and the end game, we support life. And as we talked about in the beginning of the show, supporting life supports also a respect for life and our communities as a result, and we all benefit from that same thing, from that same coming together on. If
Well,
is that a
this
way to say it?
theme, yeah, and this theme that you're articulating and to which we are committed as well, will be very much on display on Saturday at the West Coast Walk for Life, because well, it's outside of the city of, power legislation, Washington D.C.,
Right.
Supreme Court. The walk on the West Coast has a somewhat different tone to it. It's not so much focused on policy and legislation. It's focused more on culture, and it's focused on this whole idea of being pro-life is being pro-woman. We're in favor of that woman, of her having more choices, more help, and that march is as I say, it's very big. We expect about 45 to 50,000, and we'll start with my rally for Silent No More. And then we'll march through. We'll have another big rally for about an hour on the Civic Plaza in San Francisco, and then we'll march through the city. So this is something that is really, again, for those that have an open mind and an open heart, and they really pay attention. What is this movement trying to say? I think they'll be encouraged. So anyone who's out that way, who is inclined on Saturday maybe to join this walk for life, come out and see us on the Civic Plaza starting about 11 in the morning.
I want to go backwards for 1 second. This is the question that I held earlier.
Yeah.
So I'm going backwards for just a second, and it might take you a minute to give me this answer. But I watched a show recently where there's women that are coming together that had babies that were either they knew were going to be born dead, or
Mhm.
they're pregnant with babies that are born dead, or they had babies that had major malformations or
Right,
no
right,
brain, all this stuff. But because they lived in a state where abortion is very hard lined, and you cannot have an abortion at all, where like Texas, where they've banned abortion, even Louisiana to some extent, where I am, where they banned it completely, and the women in those states are having to travel outside because even though they really want to have a baby and they're pro-life, their state forbids them from having an abortion, even though they know that baby's going to be born dead or a bad, badly deformed.
right,
So,
right.
what is the pro-life organization doing anything to maybe work with states on doing something? I mean, I know that it could be seen as a backdoor, that would allow doctors in those states to say, hey, it might not be, if I put it down as deformed, you can have one, even though it's not, so it might be seen as a backdoor. But is the pro-life organization working with those states, or are they doing anything to help women that are caught in that, where they know for certain
Yes.
there may be?
Well,
Yeah.
this is important. We're working not only with the legislators, but with the medical community. Now, the situations that you mentioned briefly remind me of a good friend of mine who's also a medical advisor for our organization, Priests for Life, and about Dr. Byron Calhoun. He started something called perinatal hospice. Now we know when somebody is dying and there's nothing more you can do for them. Hospice care is something that many people are familiar with, or maybe a loved one has undergone. There's actually hospice care for the baby in the womb. And what, with the best medical advice, with the best emotional support, people very often find that it's the better option to walk through those final days or weeks of the baby's life in love, caring for that baby. Now, sometimes, when there's a medical complication of pregnancy, we never believe in killing, but
Right.
we sometimes do have to deliver the baby early. And even if that's going to introduce a bigger risk for their child, or like you say, there's situations where the doctor knows the baby is going to only live for a few hours, you can deliver that baby early. And then the beautiful thing about it is that mom, that dad, they're going to love that child. They're going to commend that child to the Lord according to whatever their religious beliefs are. And they're going to have a supportive community. And that's very different from the abortion experience, which is accompanied very often by a lot of loneliness and isolation.
Right.
Secrecy and shame, and also then later on guilt, because it's bad enough to have the trauma of, oh, my baby in the womb has a deadly serious illness, the baby's going to die. That's hard enough to deal with.
Right.
Then they have the added guilt is, oh well, I actually killed my baby, even though the baby was going to die. There's a difference between I cared for my baby in those final weeks, or I killed my baby. So a perinatal hospice is just one of many different options where, again, you get the best medical advice. Nothing is going to be harmful to the mom at all. Her health is going to be intact. And at the same time, you love that child, and, you can't do anything about
So there are options that are being talked about for women that live in states where abortion is banned completely,
where it's
that
banned.
know that even carrying the baby would hurt their chances to ever get pregnant again, or it would or it would, like I said, hurt the baby. They know the baby's going to die. So there are other things that you all are working on right now
Not
too.
only working on these things have been in place for some time, and
Okay, perfect. Good.
many people have been helped. And again, the mom's ability to have a child later on, this is not something that's at risk. And in fact, it often, it's the other way around. I mean, an abortion can destroy one's fertility completely for life. So the other thing, though, is this, that in these states where there are, like you say, these laws that no abortion is allowed,
Right.
there's always in these different situations provision for medical care for the mother. I mean, a lot of times people are they're quick to jump to the conclusion that, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to get emergency medical care. No, you're going to be able to get emergency medical care. That's the legislators that want to protect these babies want to protect the mothers too. So when there's a medical emergency, this is something where, again, you often have to deliver that baby early. And these pro-life laws do not prohibit that. They allow that option. Again, it's a medical decision. I mean, the doctor has to say, what's the best thing in this situation for this mother's health and life? And we're committed to protect that.
I'm glad you're talking about that, because this show that I watched did not mention some of these other things, and that's what I like. That's why I asked you the question, because I knew that you might know of some other options in those states that women have, and that you would be able to help show that. And and like I said, freedom liberty guy who believes in pro-life, also realizes that if we bring everybody to the table, women get cared for better, and other options become more apparent as a way to not only promote life, but promote a better society, a better, people respecting life more, which also lowers murder rates in the streets, because people who don't respect life at all are also prone to commit crimes that they don't respect life. So that's one reason I always bring you on. Well, Father Frank, is there any other thing you want to mention here, or if you want to go over one more time about this weekend?
Let's go through the events one more time. Actually, on Thursday, the 18th, we're going to have a prayer vigil at Planned Parenthood in Washington, D.C. Friday morning, the 19th, the big prayer service. We invite everyone to that, Constitution Hall. Friday afternoon, the march. Later Friday afternoon, Silent No More gathering in front of the Supreme Court. Then I'm going to hop on a plane to San Francisco. We'll do it all over again the next day. Silent No More gathering in the morning, about 11 o'clock on the Civic Center Plaza in San Francisco, and then the Walk for Life West Coast. So prolifemarch.org, that's been scrolling across the bottom. People will find all the relevant details. And if folks can't go, obviously most of the people watching it, not that they're going to be there in person, but we're going to have a lot of stuff online, and they'll be able to see video clips. If they follow me on social media, I'm at FR Frank Pavone. They're going to be able to immerse themselves in these events nevertheless, even from the comfort of their home. And what they're going to learn a lot, they're going to be inspired and encouraged, and we're going to be very happy to connect with them all.
Father Frank, it is always great to have you on my show. I always am grateful for your time, and I'm grateful for your hard work. And we're going to talk again soon, and I look forward to it. And I want to thank you very much for your time.
Oh, you're all most welcome. It's always a joy to talk to you, and I look forward to the next opportunities.
Hang on one second. I'm going to close out the show with everybody else. Please, guys, if you're watching this, share it with somebody who you think would be interested in the pro-life march, or even being involved in an organization that's to bring more people together to support women's choices and also support women's health and other things that we talked about in this. If you listen to the podcast, it'll also be on my Rumble channel. Thank you so much for sharing the show. I really appreciate it.